we're going to talk about naming acids. Remember back when we talked about ionic bonding? Acids work very similarly to ionic bonds. So there are some rules we need for naming. First, we need to know what the ending of our ion is. If it ends in IDE, such as chloride, bromide, fluoride, then when you make it into an acid, the name changes to have a prefix of hydro and then ic. That's why when we have the chloride ion, and then we make it an acid by putting hydrogen on it, it becomes HCl. Now we call it hydrochloric acid. If we have an ion that ends in ate, such as sulfate, and sulfate is SO4 minus 2. When we add hydrogens to it, we change the ending to ic, so it becomes sulfuric acid. When we have an ion ending in ITE, such as nitrite, NO2 minus 1, when we put hydrogens on it to change it to an acid, it becomes nitrous acid. So you need to learn that ions end in IDE start with hydro and end with ic. Another way to remember that one is that for this one there will be no oxygens. Right? So for the ones that would have oxygens, there's of course going to be your polyatomic ions. And if it ends in ate, then the acid becomes ic. If the ion ends in ite, the acid becomes us. So again, some examples. As I just said, HCl, there's no oxygen, so it would start with hydro. And then end with ic, so it would be hydrochloric acid. And it does have to have the word acid. Next, ClO3. If we look in our polyatomic ion list, we'll find ClO3 is called chlorate. And so we just learned that the ion ends in ate, then the acid ends in ic. So this would be chloric acid. So again, the difference between the first one and the second one is that the second has oxygen and the first has none. So again, if there's no oxygen, it's going to start with hydro. So the next one, ClO2, that's chlorite. If you look on your polyatomic ion list. And that then will become an us acid, so it's chlorus acid. Right? ClO is hypochlorite. And so again, it still ends in ite, so the ending still becomes us. So this one will be hypochlorous acid. So it's really the ending of the ion. So again, this one is I and became ic. This one is ate and became ic. So the difference between this and this, of course, the hydro meaning no oxygen. That's important to remember. Okay? If it ends in ite, then the acid ends in us. And again, same thing here. It makes no difference that there's a new different prefix here. The ending is what matters. Ite becomes an us acid. Alright, so if we're going to write the formulas for the acids, the hydrogen ion is what we call an acidic proton. That's what makes it an acid. The charge of a compound, remember, must be 0. So again, they have to add up to 0. Okay? And so, if we want, for example, hydrobromic acid. Hydrobromic acid. Again, that hydro prefix tells me there's no oxygen. So it's going to be an H and a Br only. And so my charge of hydrogen is always +1. Br is in group 7. And so that's going to be -1. And so since that adds up to 0 already, the formula would just be HBr. If I had sulfuric acid, again, I have to think about my naming rules. The acid ends in ic, so my ion has to end in ate. So we'll find out what is sulfate. On our polyatomic ion list, we find sulfate is SO4 minus 2. Since it has a -2 charge, hydrogens are +1. How many hydrogens do I need? Right, 2. So it'll be H2SO4. and then my charge is no longer present because A equals 0. And then if I had phosphorus acid, look on my polyatomic ion list and I'll find that phosphite, remember if it ends in us, the ion ends in ite. Phosphite is not on my list, but if we recall from our rules of polyatomic ions, ite ions are one less oxygen than the 8 ions, and so phosphite will be PO3, still a -3 charge. And since it's a -3 charge, I need how many hydrogens, which are all +1? That's right, I need 3. So H3PO3, then I no longer have a charge. Right. So some more examples. Take a moment and do these, and then we'll come back and we will go over them. Alright, so sulfuric acid, it came from an 8 ion, and so that's sulfate, SO4, the -2, so it needs how many hydrogens? 2. My charge goes away. Phosphoric, again, it came from an 8 ion, and so phosphate is PO4 with a -3, so it needs how many hydrogens? 3. So it's H3PO4. Chromic acid, again it ends in ic, so the ion's going to end in 8. And so chromate, CrO4, with a -2, so it needs 2 hydrogens. So the charge would go away. Sulfurous acid ends in ite. Us acids came from ite ions, and so sulfite is SO3 with a -2. So this -2 I have to have 2 hydrogens. Alright, so at this point I'm going to stop the video and I'm going to practice. The answers to the practice will be on Blackboard tomorrow afternoon. But we will be going over them in class, so be sure that you complete the practice problems to the best of your ability before coming to class tomorrow.